There is a difference between a man who knows where he is going and a man who is simply moving. Both look busy. Both wake up early. Both work, plan, pray, and go to church. But one has direction. The other only has speed. And James, the brother of Jesus, wrote one of the most terrifying sentences in the New Testament to describe the second man. He used two Greek words that together form a spiritual diagnosis, explaining why you might have been living the same repeated year for a decade. The word is dipsychos. Double-souled, divided mind. And James says that this man is unstable in all his ways. Not in some, in all. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It is a spiritual law of operation. When your soul is divided between two loyalties, two directions, two masters, you don't advance in either. You vacillate. You start over. You plan in January and abandon it in March. You decide on Sunday and give up on Thursday. And 2025 ended just like 2024, and 2024 just like 2023. Not because you didn't try hard enough, not because God didn't want to bless you, but because there is a law operating against you that you've never named, never understood, and therefore never broke. This law is in James 1:6-8. And when you truly understand it, not as a memorized verse, but as a spiritual operating principle, you realize that it is impossible to move forward without first resolving the problem of the divided soul. But there is something more. Because James doesn't just diagnose the problem, he points to the cure. And the cure isn't more effort. It's not more discipline. It's not a list of resolutions for 2026. It is wisdom. And wisdom, according to James, is given by God to those who ask, but only to those who ask in faith without dividing the soul between trusting and doubting. Later on, we are going to pray a prayer that doesn't ask for more effort. It asks for wisdom and unity of soul. A prayer that breaks the cycle of repetition, that anchors your direction, that transforms a double soul into a single heart before God. But you need to understand what James is actually saying, because if you pray without understanding, you will pray the same way you've always prayed and get the same results you've always gotten. So stay with me, because what comes next isn't motivation, it's navigation. Open with me to James 1:2-8. Let's read the full text before we break it down, because James 1:6-8, the verses about the divided soul, don't float in a vacuum. They are the conclusion of an argument that begins 2 verses earlier. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Now let's take this apart piece by piece, because every phrase here is a battle order. James starts in a place no one would expect. He doesn't start with promises, he starts with tribulation. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials. The Greek word for trials here is pyrasmoi. It's not a moral temptation, it's a stress test. It's the pressure a material undergoes to reveal its actual strength, the same principle engineers use when testing a bridge before opening it to traffic. James is saying, the pressures you are facing are not accidents. They are spiritual stress tests, and he connects it immediately. The testing of your faith produces patience. Hupomone. The Greek word for patience here isn't resigned passivity. It's not shutting up and taking it. It is active endurance. It's the soldier who doesn't retreat under fire. It's the root that goes deeper when the wind picks up. And the goal of hupomone is that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Teleos. Perfect, not in the sense of being error-free, but in the sense of being complete, mature, having reached full purpose. Here is what James is saying to you specifically. With everything you've lived through up to this point, the decades of experience, the mistakes you regret, the losses you've carried, the years that seemed wasted? None of that was discarded by God. It was all construction material. It was all pressure meant to produce depth. The problem isn't what you lived through. The problem is what you did with what you lived through. And that's where James arrives at verse 5. Thaster nuddy, the wisdom you didn't ask for. Verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach. Notice what James does, not say. He doesn't say, if anyone lacks talent, let him ask. He doesn't say, if anyone lacks resources, let him ask. He doesn't say, if anyone lacks opportunity, let him ask. He says wisdom. Why? Because wisdom is what transforms experience into direction. Experience without wisdom is just a memory. Experience with wisdom is a compass. You have decades of experience. You've already navigated storms that took others down. You've survived losses, disappointments, betrayals, and diagnoses that felt like a death sentence. You are standing when others who seemed stronger are not. But if 2025 was the same as 2024, the problem isn't a lack of experience, it's a lack of wisdom to know what to do with it. And James says, this wisdom is available, now, for you. No cost, no merit-based conditions. God gives liberally and without reproach. The word liberally here is haplos. Simplicity, generosity without calculation, without collecting a debt, without keeping a record of previous unmerited requests. God isn't going to say, you asked me for wisdom 10 years ago and didn't use it. Why would I give it again? He doesn't work that way. He gives. Simply, generously, without a history of default chasing you down. But there is a condition. And that condition is in verses 6 through 8. And this is where most people get stuck. The problem of the divided soul, verses 6 to 8. But let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. The Greek word for doubting here is diakrinomenos. And this word doesn't simply mean having intellectual doubt about God's existence. It literally means to be divided against yourself, to be in an internal dispute. Judging in two directions at the same time. It's the image of a courtroom where you are simultaneously the judge, the prosecutor, and the defendant, and you never reach a verdict because every part of you argues against the other. And James uses the metaphor of the rough sea, not of a lost ship, but of a wave that goes nowhere. It just goes up and down, moved by the external wind because it has no internal direction. Have you ever felt like that? Confident one day, desperate the next. At peace one week, in a panic the following. Decided in January, exhausted in February. Full of faith at the service, full of anxiety in the car on the way home. That isn't a weakness of character. It is dipsychos, double soul. And verse 7 is relentless. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. It isn't a punishment. It is spiritual mechanics. When you approach God with a divided soul, you aren't really asking. You are negotiating. You are saying, God, I trust you, but if it doesn't work, I have my plan B. And God is not plan A competing with your plan B. He is the only source, or he is no source at all. Now let's get out of the Greek and into the living room, the doctor's office, the dinner table. Dipsychos is when you pray for a family member's health, and you're already researching the worst possible diagnosis at the same time. That isn't prudence. It is a soul divided between faith and catastrophe. Dipsychos is when you feel God is calling you to something. A ministry, a difficult conversation with a child, a change of direction in retirement, and you say, yes, Lord, in prayer, and but what if? The rest of the day. Dipsychos is when you retire after decades of work, and part of you believes God still has a purpose for you, while another part believes, I've done my part, now it's time to rest and wait. Two souls, two destinies, no path fully traveled. Dipsychos is when you want to have enough faith to trust God with the relationship of your grandchildren who have walked away from the faith, but you keep trying to control the situation, giving unasked advice, creating tension that increases the very distance you want to close. And the result in every case is verse 8, instability in all your ways, not in some, in all. Because a divided soul doesn't compartmentalize. It contaminates. The man who is dipsychos in faith is dipsychos in relationships. He is dipsychos in decisions. He is dipsychos in purpose. Internal division spreads to everything. And here is where James breaks with every self-help logic you've ever consumed. The solution for a divided soul isn't to divide yourself with more energy. It's not trying harder. It's not waking up earlier, praying longer, or reading more chapters. The solution is the wisdom that unifies. When you receive wisdom from God, real wisdom, not information, not accumulated biblical knowledge, but the wisdom from above described in James 3:17 as pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy, that wisdom resolves the internal dispute. It doesn't eliminate the difficulty, it unifies the direction, and the man with unified direction, even when facing obstacles, moves forward. Because he is no longer wasting energy on an internal war. Think of a ship with two captains giving contradictory orders. The ship goes nowhere, not because the engine is weak, not because the sea is rough, but because there is division in command. You have decades of engine. You have experience worth its weight in gold. What is missing is a single captain in the command cabin of your soul, and that captain has a name. Look at Jesus in Gethsemane. John 17, the high priestly prayer before the garden. Jesus prays for hours. There is no dipsychos there. There is real human tension. If possible, let this cup pass from me. But there is unity of soul, not my will, but yours. That isn't resignation. It is the most unified soul in human history operating at its maximum pressure point. And the result? There is no hesitation in Gethsemane. When Judas arrives, Jesus doesn't retreat, doesn't negotiate, doesn't look for an exit. He advances. Because the decision had already been made at the deepest level of the soul. You can live like that, not in perfection, but in unified direction. And when you live like that, 2026 doesn't repeat 2025, because you are no longer a wave tossed by external winds. You have an internal anchor. That anchor has a name, and that is what the prayer we will pray together will establish in your life today. Let me paint two portraits, not of fictional characters, of real people you probably know because one of them might be you. The first is Harold, 73 years old, retired for 6 years from a 4-decade career as an engineer. A man of genuine faith, attends church for 50 years, knows the Bible better than most young pastors in the congregation, has served in almost every ministry the church offered. But Harold is stuck, not visibly. From the outside, Harold looks stable, but inside, there are two Harolds in constant war. The Harold who believes God still has a purpose for him in this stage of life, and the Harold who believes the best has already passed, that now it's just maintenance, that I've already done my part. When Harold's granddaughter walked away from the faith in college, the Harold of faith wanted to have a deep conversation with her, an honest conversation without judgment, full of grace. But the Harold of doubt was paralyzed by the fear of making the relationship worse, so he did nothing. He sent generic texts about God's love that she ignored, and the distance grew. When Harold felt God putting a ministry of mentorship on his heart for younger men in the congregation, something his 4 decades of life experience qualified him for like no one else, the Harold of faith said yes, but the Harold of doubt said, "Who's going to listen to me? I'm old. The world has changed. My experience isn't relevant." And the ministry never got off the ground. When Harold's doctor found something in the exams that needed follow-up, the Harold of faith prayed and trusted. But the Harold of doubt spent 3 weeks researching diagnoses on the internet at 2 in the morning, arriving back at the office with more anxiety than when he left. Harold isn't weak. Harold doesn't have small faith. Harold has a divided soul, and the division is costing everything: relationships, purpose, peace. The second portrait is Dorothy, 68 years old, a widow for 4 years, lost her husband after 42 years of marriage, the anchor of the family, the man who made the big decisions, the partner who made everything easier to navigate. After the loss, Dorothy discovered something that surprised even her. She had a voice. She had perspective. She had decades of accumulated wisdom that somehow she had never given the space it deserved. Dorothy could have shrunk. Many expected her to shrink. But Dorothy did something different. She asked for wisdom. In the way James describes it, without dividing the soul between trusting and doubting, she stopped trying to solve the question of, what do I do with the rest of my life, on her own, and started genuinely asking the only one who knew the answer. And wisdom came, not with fanfare, not with a dramatic vision, with a quiet and growing clarity. Dorothy started visiting women in the congregation who were going through losses, not with canned answers, with presence, with the authority of someone who survived and stayed standing, with that which no self-help book can manufacture, suffered credibility. In 18 months, what started as informal visits became a support group that transformed the lives of dozens of women. Dorothy didn't plan it. She asked for wisdom. She followed a unified direction, and God added to it. The difference between Harold and Dorothy isn't talent. It isn't circumstance. It isn't that Dorothy had less pain. It's that Dorothy resolved the problem of the divided soul, and Harold hasn't resolved it yet. Now I need to speak about something that no one says directly to people with more life experience. There is a form of spiritual procrastination that is exclusive to those who have decades of accumulated experience, and it is especially dangerous because it disguises itself as virtue. It's called "I've already contributed." It's different from the procrastination of a young person who puts things off because they don't know who they are yet. You know who you are. You've already proven what you can do. You've already given decades to work, family, and ministry. And now there is a voice, subtle, persuasive, sounding reasonable, that says, "You've done your part. Now rest. Let the younger ones take over. You deserve peace." And part of that voice is right. Rest is biblical. Sabbath is a commandment, not a suggestion. But there is a huge difference between rest as renewal and inactivity as spiritual retirement, and James doesn't have a single verse for the idea of spiritual retirement, because it doesn't exist in the New Testament. Paul wrote some of his deepest letters imprisoned in a Roman cell, in what should have been, by any human metric, the "I've contributed enough" phase. He didn't retire. He wrote Philippians, one of the most joyful letters in the New Testament, chained to a guard. John wrote Revelation in exile on Patmos, not in the comfortable chair of a retired patriarch. The deepest spiritual authority a person can have is not accumulated in the first years of faith. It is distilled in the final decades. What you carry now, after everything you've lived, lost, learned, and survived, is precisely the kind of wisdom James describes as available to whoever asks. And the question isn't whether you have something to offer. It's whether you will resolve the divided soul enough to offer it. Most likely you are thinking of at least 2 or 3 things to justify spiritual procrastination. The first, I've made too many mistakes. There are things in my past that disqualify what God could do through me now. James didn't write to people who never made mistakes. He wrote to a dispersed community, persecuted, full of internal conflicts. So much so that in chapter 4 he asks where the wars and fights among them come from. This wasn't a congregation of perfect people receiving instruction from a perfect apostle. James was the brother of Jesus who didn't believe in him during his public ministry. John 7:5 is explicit. For even his brothers did not believe in him. James lived with the Son of God and doubted, and he became the leader of the church in Jerusalem and the author of one of the most practical letters in the New Testament. Your past is not disqualifying. It is part of the material God works with. The second objection, I'm too old to start something new. The moment has passed. Caleb was 85 years old when he asked for Hebron, the most difficult, most mountainous, most occupied part of the promised territory. Joshua 14:11, As yet I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me. He didn't ask for the easiest territory. He asked for the challenge. The question isn't how many years you have. It's whether your soul is unified in the right direction. The third and most common, I've already tried, I prayed, I believed, I moved, and it didn't work. This objection deserves respect because it comes from real pain. But James anticipated it. That's why he starts the chapter with tribulation and perseverance, not with a promise of immediate results. Hupomone, active endurance, exists precisely because there will be moments when you move in faith and don't see immediate results. The test isn't whether it worked on the first try. The test is whether you maintained a unified direction through the delay. A wave gets nowhere because the wind tosses it. But a ship with a calibrated compass, even in a rough sea, reaches its destination because its direction doesn't depend on the external weather. There is something that no one can take from you and that no one younger can replace. You are the only one who can be you for the specific people in your life. Your adult children who have distanced themselves. Your grandchildren who are navigating a world that seems to have no moral compass. The younger members of your congregation who need to see with their own eyes what a faith that survived decades of pressure and stayed standing looks like. They don't need your perfection. They need your direction. And direction only comes when the soul stops being double. Harold can have that conversation with his granddaughter, not because he will have the right words, but because a unified soul has a presence that right words can never replace. The granddaughter doesn't need a theological argument from her grandfather. She needs to see a man who actually believes what he says and doesn't live as if he only sort of believes. But Harold needs to resolve the dipsychos first. And the prayer we will pray together exists exactly for that, not to ask for more strength to stay divided, to ask for wisdom that unifies, to decree the end of vacillation, to anchor the soul in one direction and start moving in that direction. Today, not when circumstances improve, not when doubt decreases, not when you feel more ready. Because a unified soul doesn't wait to feel, it decides. And the feeling, the peace, the clarity, those come after the decision, not before. 2026 can be different, not because circumstances will automatically change, but because you are going to stop being a wave and start being a ship. And a ship with a single captain reaches its destination. Before we pray, I need you to do one physical thing. Stand up. If you are sitting, stand up. Straighten your spine, shoulders back, chin parallel to the floor. This isn't a ritual. It is a posture of declaration. Because what you are about to do is not the plea of someone defeated asking for help. It is the decree of someone who understood the problem, identified the solution, and is ready to receive and act. Are you standing? Then let's go. Father, I come before you not as someone who is trying to convince themselves of something. I come as someone who finally understood the diagnosis. For years I called this weakness, lack of faith, a temperament problem, but the right name is divided soul. And today, in this moment, I name it for what it is. And I decree that it ends here. Lord, I confess, I have been praying with one hand open to you and the other holding my plan B. I've been saying I trust with my mouth and obsessively recalculating with my mind. I've been moving in two directions at the same time and wondering why I don't advance. I was a wave, tossed by the external wind, going up and down with every circumstance, every news report, every test result, every difficult conversation, every silence from a child or grandchild who doesn't reply. And while I was a wave, I went nowhere. I acknowledge this, without excuse, without justification. Dipsychos, that was me, but not today. Lord James 1:5 says that if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach. So I ask, not with a soul divided between trusting and doubting, with a unified soul, with a decision made before this prayer even began. I ask for wisdom, not information, not more accumulated biblical knowledge, wisdom, the wisdom that transforms decades of experience into clear direction, the wisdom that knows what to do with what I have lived, the losses, the mistakes, the victories, the scars, the wisdom that James 3:17 describes, pure, peaceable, gentle, full of mercy and good fruits. I ask for this wisdom now, and I receive it now. I will not wait to feel it. I declare that I have received it, because you promised to give it, and you do not lie. Now, Lord, I decree the end of the divided soul over my life. I reject the vacillation between faith and doubt that turned me into a destination-less wave. I reject the voice that says yes in prayer and, but what if, the rest of the day. I reject the lie that I've already done my part, and now only waiting remains. I reject the illusion that my best days of spiritual usefulness are behind me. I reject the fear of starting something new in this stage of life. I reject the paralysis disguised as prudence. I reject Plan B. I declare, you are my only plan, my only source, my only direction. And where there were two captains disputing the command of my soul, I decree there is one. Your name, your will, your direction. Lord, I put on wisdom as armor over every area where a divided soul has cost me progress. Over my family relationships, where I vacillated between wanting to get closer and being afraid of making things worse, I decree unified direction. I will no longer be paralyzed by fear of the results of conversations you have called me to have. I will have the conversation with grace, with presence, with the authority of someone who survived and has something real to offer. Not because I will have the perfect words, but because a unified soul has a weight that perfect words can never replace. Over my purpose in this stage of life, where I vacillated between feeling the call and believing it was too late, I decree unified direction. I put on the truth that what God has distilled in me through decades is not to be kept. It is to be given. I decree that the ministry, the mentorship, the presence, the testimony, whatever you have placed in my heart, starts to move as of today. Not when I feel ready. Today. Over my health and the uncertainties it brings, where I vacillated between trusting you and researching the worst-case scenario, I decree unified direction. I care for my body responsibly, but I refuse to make medical fear the governor of my peace. I decree, my peace doesn't depend on what the exam says, it depends on who you are, and you are the same yesterday, today, and forever. Over my faith in general, I decree that from today on, when I pray in faith. Not in perfect faith, but in unified faith, without a plan B hidden behind my back, without negotiation disguised as prayer, with a soul that decided before opening its mouth and prays to seal what has already been decided. Lord, I declare over my mind and over my heart, I am no longer a wave tossed by the external wind. I am a ship with a calibrated compass. The wind will continue. Circumstances will continue to be uncertain. Diagnoses will continue to arrive. Children and grandchildren will continue to make decisions that worry me. But my direction is not determined by the external wind. It is determined by the wisdom that comes from above, and that wisdom I asked for, and I received, and I act upon it now. Father, Caleb was 85 and asked for the hardest mountain. Paul wrote about joy chained in a cell. John received the greatest prophetic revelation in history in the exile of Patmos. Deep spiritual authority is not the privilege of those starting out. It is the inheritance of those who persevered. And I persevered, not without mistakes, not without falls, but I persevered. And today I receive what perseverance produced: completeness, maturity, direction, purpose that does not apologize for its own existence. I decree over my life, 2026 does not repeat 2025, not because circumstances will automatically be different, but because I am different, because today the divided soul was named, rejected, and replaced by unified direction. Because today I asked for wisdom in faith, without dividing my soul between trusting and doubting. Because today I stopped being a wave and became a ship, and a ship with a single captain reaches its destination. Lord, I close this prayer not with a request, but with a declaration of receipt. I received wisdom. I received unified direction. I received active purpose for this phase, not spiritual retirement, but the phase of greatest depth and authority I have ever lived. And I commit myself. When doubt comes to try and divide my soul again, and it will, I will not negotiate with it. I will name it. I will reject it. I will decree the single order again. Not once, as many times as necessary, because a calibrated compass doesn't stop pointing north when the wind changes. It maintains its direction. And I maintain my direction. In the name of Jesus Christ, the one who in Gethsemane unified his soul under the Father's will, the one who is the same captain today that he was yesterday. Amen. Here is your mission for the next 24 hours. Just one, not a list. Identify the specific area of your life where the divided soul has cost you the most. It could be a relationship. It could be a calling you feel but haven't acted on. It could be a decision you've been putting off for months because part of you trusts and part of you doubts. You already know what it is. It came to mind while you were listening. It wasn't a coincidence. Write it down on a piece of paper, by hand, not on your phone. Write what it is. Write the direction the wisdom you asked for today is pointing, and write one concrete small action that you are going to take in the next 24 hours in that unified direction. Not the full action, the first step. A ship doesn't reach its destination in one jump. It reaches it by maintaining its direction mile by mile. Keep that paper. Put it where you will see it tomorrow morning. That's all. One area, one direction, one step. 24 hours. Now think of one specific person in your life, not a list of candidates, one person who you know is running in circles, who starts the year with determination and ends in the same place. Someone you've seen vacillate between faith and doubt so many times you've lost count. Send this video to them now, not later. Now, before you close the screen. Because the greatest act of legacy you can practice today is not what you're going to do for your own life. It's who you're going to push toward theirs. And sometimes the person who most needs to hear about the divided soul is exactly the one you've seen divided for years and never knew how to name the problem. Now you know the name. Now you have the tool, use it. And now I need to prepare you for what comes next. Because what we studied today, the divided soul, the wisdom that unifies, the end of vacillation, is the foundation. It is the firm ground you need under your feet before taking the next step. And the next step is going to require that ground, because in the next video, we are going to open the book of Revelation. And before you associate that with abstract prophecies and end times timelines, stop. That isn't what we're going to do. Revelation was written by John for people who were afraid of the future, people living under the pressure of an empire that seemed unbeatable, people who looked at the circumstances around them and wondered, is God still in control? Does it still make sense to trust? Those questions haven't aged. You ask them today with different words, about the economy, about the country, about your children navigating a world that seems to have lost its way, about medical diagnoses that arrive without warning, about a future that seems less predictable than it once was. And John, the same John who lived with Jesus, who was present at the Transfiguration, who was called the beloved disciple, wrote from a lonely exile on the island of Patmos the most complete revelation on how to live without fear of the future that the New Testament contains. Not because the future becomes controllable, but because you begin to see who is sitting on the throne above everything that seems out of control. And when you see that, really see it, not as a theological concept, but as a revelation that goes from the intellect down to the bone, the fear of the future loses the address where it used to live in you. But here is what needs to be clear. You can only receive this revelation with a unified soul. A divided soul reads Revelation and finds more anxiety. A unified soul reads Revelation and finds an anchor. That's why today came first. Turn on the notification bell now so you don't miss the next video, because what John saw on Patmos was given specifically for people who needed courage for the future, and you are exactly that person. I'll see you there.